Amanda. Hi, everyone, and welcome. As Amanda said, my name is Sarah Brown, and I am the editor of Timber Home Living magazine. And this webinar is going to be on expert tips for designing the perfect kitchen or bringing your dream kitchen to life. As Amanda said, there will be a question and answer segment at the end of this webinar. I just wanted to say if your question is not answered during the presentation or at the end, please feel free to email me. My email address is on your screen, or you can email Claudia Johnson at Honest Blog Homes. Her contact information is also on the screen in front of you. And both of us, whoever you contact, one of us will get back to you as soon as possible. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. First of all, I just wanted to start on a personal note. I don't know about the rest of you, but whenever I find time in my busy day to browse through home ideas, whether it be online or in magazines, I find that I almost always find myself becoming fixated on the kitchen photos. From the layouts to the materials and the amenities, these spaces seem to really have become a real favorite amongst home design enthusiasts, and it really stands to reason if you think about it. The kitchen is the place where you'll likely gather with family and friends during the holidays, or maybe it will be the spot where you'll find yourself enjoying a simple dinner just perched at 2 bar stools at the kitchen island with your significant other. Either way, there's something about the kitchen that always seems to draw us in, and it's because of this frequent use that this highly functional and eye-catching space should really be planned to as close to perfection as possible. Also keep in mind when you're thinking about your kitchen that this space is typically the single most expensive and sometimes complex area when you're designing or renovating or building a log or timber home. A broad range of appliances, cabinets, workspaces, all these things need to be considered and included, and they all have their own need for space or electricity, and certainly they need to be in a place where they can function well. So balancing these needs appropriately is something of an art, but I think with proper planning and forethought, any space that you design can really turn into a fantastic kitchen. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of kitchen design, I thought we should start with maybe something a little lighter, typically where it all starts, which is inspiration. So when it comes to planning a custom home, there's a lot to be said for visualizing your house before you start designing it. And we all know that most log or timber home enthusiasts spend some amount of time, whether it be weeks or months or even years, doodling potential plans on scrap pieces of paper or ripping out design ideas from magazines or even bookmarking photos online to provide inspiration for their future house. And this same idea or practice can be applied specifically when you're thinking about your future kitchen. So as you're coming up with ideas for your kitchen, I would suggest that you should imagine yourself living in the space. Literally walk through it in your mind and think about how it will look and feel. Will it be small and cozy, or will it be sprawling and spacious? Is it somewhat tucked away in the back of your house or on the side, or is it looking out onto your home's larger living areas? What will you see in front of you? What will you see behind you? What will you see above you? What will you see below you? This should make you think about things like flooring, walls, windows, cabinets, even your ceilings. What sounds will you hear? Answering these questions will give you a more complete picture of what your finished kitchen should look, live, and feel like. The beauty of building one of these custom houses is that it can be built in virtually any style you want, meaning you can create any style of kitchen as well to go with it. The thing is, sometimes when you have this endless amount of options like you do with log or timber homes, it can be overwhelming trying to decide what look you should narrow down and really go for in your house. And this especially goes for a room like the kitchen that's going to be so important in determining the style of your overall home. But here's the thing, if you don't know how to articulate what style of kitchen you're drawn to, don't worry about it too much. When you set out to design the space, you're likely going to be working with a designer or an architect, and they're going to ask you specific questions like, what type of feel do you want your kitchen to have? Or maybe they'll ask you about the colors and the textures and the materials that you find yourself drawn to. They'll probably even ask what kind of amenities you want to include. And from there, you'll be able to decide, working together, if you should create a light and airy kitchen with white finishes and lots of natural light, for example, or if you should turn to reclaimed finishes and darker hues for a more rustic feel. These are just a few examples. From there, the style of kitchen you desire will have an impact on the plan of the kitchen itself. In a dark kitchen with, say, espresso colored cabinets or mahogany cabinets, for example, you may want to keep the footprint of the space more open and think about incorporating more natural light to keep the kitchen from feeling small or dark. On the other hand, a traditional or contemporary style kitchen with more room for incorporating things like drywall or lighter hued woods, or simpler finishes could lend themselves to a smaller space that will still feel light and bright even though the footprint or the square footage is a little bit smaller. So once you've thought long and hard about how you live on a day-to-day basis and really start to visualize the kitchen you want to create, you're going to need to share those ideas with your architect or designer. So although they will ask you questions to prompt you, you should also try to convey your ideas to those that you're working with, and that's pretty simple. What we suggest is that you keep some kind of log, whether it be hard copies or digital, with things and photos that you like. Some people compile a huge notebook of clippings, some bookmark photos on websites, and some keep their own digital file. Simply look for kitchens and features of kitchens that speak to you. Even if you don't wind up using those exact ideas that you show your team, this will give them an idea of what you want your home and your kitchen to look like, and it will give them an indication of the quality of kitchen you expect. It sounds funny, but it's also a good idea maybe to collect a few photos of kitchens that you absolutely don't like. You really can't underestimate the power of photography when it comes to kitchens, because in this kind of space where anything is possible, providing a designer with a photo or a group of photos with exact images of what you do or do not like will have a major impact on the finished kitchen that you're going to create. Okay, so now let's start talking about how you're going to plan your kitchen. As I mentioned during the intro, kitchens really reflect our desire to create timeless traditions to share with those that we love. That's why so many kitchens today have become these real gathering spaces, meaning that homeowners and designers are seeking ways to ease the workhorse elements of the kitchen, or at least make them more attractive and add some added comfort in its place. This trend, if you think about it, is even more popular in log and timber homes because the warmth of the wood around you already lends itself to that inviting atmosphere that you're most likely trying to create in your kitchen. So the first step in designing your kitchen, much like the first step in designing your home's overall floor plan, is to really think about and decide how you and your family intend to use the space now and down the road in the future. So how many people do you intend to have working in the kitchen at the same time? Will you be using it for heavy-duty cooking on a regular basis or just every once in a while? Do you live more formally or do you tend to live really casually? From there, you can begin thinking about how you want to lay out your kitchen space. So for years and years, and certainly since I've been doing what I do at Timber Home Living, designers and people have relied on this concept of the kitchen work triangle when they're designing kitchen spaces. This concept tends to orient task-specific areas, namely the refrigerator, the range or the stove, and the sink so that the cook can move through the motions of food prep, then onto cooking, and then onto cleanup in a sort of triangular, everything is nice and nearby kind of pattern. In the most efficient triangles, designers have said in the past that the size of the triangle should total no more than 26 feet with no individual leg of the triangle measuring less than 4 feet. This concept really does make perfect sense, and it can be the reason why a kitchen is really easy and enjoyable to work and move around in. But something I want to emphasize to you guys tonight is that this formula isn't always the right solution for every kitchen. Typically, if you think about it, the size of your house or the size of your kitchen or site constraints or even the preferences of the future homeowner are going to trump any kind of preconceived notion of how a kitchen should be laid out. So instead of putting so much emphasis or relying so heavily on the traditional triangle, many of today's designers rely more on the use of what they call zones that can be incorporated into any kitchen design regardless of existing space challenges or style guidelines that are set by you, the client. By organizing your kitchen into zones, you'll be able to move the flow of traffic and make it easy to focus on the different tasks at hand. So let's look at a few photos to illustrate these zones. First, on your screen, I'm going to talk about the prep zone. A prep zone, whether it be a perimeter countertop around the outskirts of your kitchen or an island, is important for every kitchen. In this photo, for example, the island is a self-contained prep station with a small vegetable sink that you can see in the middle. It also has strong granite countertops and roomy shelves and cabinets on the side of the island for added storage. There's also enough room, if you look on the end, for a chopping station. And the island does a really good job of directing the traffic flow to the sides of the kitchen rather than straight through the middle, and provides extra seating that was purposefully left on the far side of the kitchen, again, to help with traffic flow reasons and to help with crowding around the cooking areas. The second zone that a lot of designers focus on is the cook zone. In the cook zone, you want your microwave oven, your wall oven or range, and your stove top to be in one general area. In this photo, it's a little hard to see the whole range back to the left, but you can see that the cook zone is located just steps away from the main sink on the right with a sizable amount of prep space, countertop space to the right and a little bit to the left as well. The range is what really anchors the zone with plenty of large cabinets, and they have those deep drawers to the right for things like pots and pans and cooking utensils. Also, I want you to look at this island area to the left. The peninsula island, as we call it, really comes into play here because if you think about it, because of this added countertop area, the person that's cooking at the stove can cook the food, plate the food, and potentially serve it to guests at that peninsula without even having to move away from that one zone. So this is a really smart design for the cook area with this peninsula to the left. The third zone I want to talk about is the cleanup zone, which is obviously important. The key to a cleanup zone is proximity. It doesn't really matter where the sink is positioned in your kitchen, as long as it's pretty close to the cook zone. But this particular kitchen, if you look, does a really good job with placement because while the main sink is situated in front of the window, which is always nice because it gives the cook or the cleanup person a pretty view while they're doing the dishes, it's also in a smart position because any of the items that have been on the range can be easily slid down the countertop from the cooking zone straight to the sink and the dishwasher. The dishwasher and the cabinets for glassware and plates are also within easy reach from the cleanup zone. Last, we have the office or desk zone. Now, this zone isn't something that a lot of designers are going to talk about, and it certainly is not necessary in a kitchen, but I wanted to point it out because it is gaining in popularity, and it is a smart alternative to designing, say, a full office or a study in your log and timber home, especially if you're planning on designing a smaller house. So setting up a home office right in the kitchen is a convenient way to stay organized and to keep everything close at hand. If you decide to do this, make sure you have room for phones, probably a plug-in for your computer or your laptop, and some people would include a television if you plan on spending a lot of time in your kitchen and you'd like one. If you'd rather this space not be out in the open, it can also be designed to be concealed by cabinets if you sort of tuck it behind a little door. As any designer will tell you, there's no real tried and true layout for kitchens or even for those zones that I just talked about. But you do want to include the three main zones, and really think about where you're placing them for convenience and ease of use. Once you've decided on that positioning, it's time to sort of really get down to business. But fortunately, there are some really easy formulas you can follow to make sure you're creating a kitchen that functions and lives comfortably. So I'm going to go through these really quickly. For adequate prep space for your counters and things like that, you should aim for 158 total square inches of countertop. The standard height for countertops is 34 to 36 inches above the floor, and the standard depth is 24 inches, but this can vary based on your size, preferences, and also things like the depth of your appliances, or even if you choose some kind of backsplash. In terms of prep space, try for at least 12 inches of counter space on at least one side of your stovetop, if not both, and also to the side of your refrigerator. Keep in mind that your kitchen island might contribute to that total counter space in your kitchen. If you plan to use your island for prep space, the size of the island should be a minimum of 3 by 4 feet. If you plan to use it for seating purposes, then the perimeter of the island should allow for roughly 24 inches of space per person you plan on seating at the island. Also keep in mind that the walking space between countertops should be at least 42 inches wide, but no more than 64 inches apart, because you don't want it to become difficult to get from one counter to the other. You don't want your space to be so spread out that you actually lose efficiency during meal prep. If 2 or more cooks are regularly together in your kitchen, you'll probably want to bump that space up to more like 48 inches between counter spaces. And also think about, for safety purposes, make sure that your layout allows the correct operation of each of your appliances. So I'm thinking about things like your oven or your dishwasher. Make sure you don't position your countertops in a way that you won't be able to open your oven the whole way or open your countertop the whole way without obstruction. So now let's move on to the topic of storage, which is very important in a kitchen. The measurements that I just talked about also go for kitchen storage. So real quick, designers recommend at least 18 square feet of general storage in a kitchen. Tack on, basically this is just a recommendation, to tack on another 6 square feet for each additional family member that you anticipate using the space. To achieve this kind of ample storage, first think about the items you'll definitely have in your kitchen. So for that, I'm thinking about cabinets. The first idea is, if you're designing a kitchen with a flat ceiling, opt for wall cabinets that go all the way up to that ceiling rather than those cabinets that stop short. This will help you create the maximum amount of storage in your cabinet. If you're thinking of including a lot of cabinetry, which The whole kitchen doesn't need to be filled with cabinetry, but it's always a good idea where storage is concerned. Glass fronts on at least some of the cabinet doors will keep your kitchen feeling open and airy while still providing you that storage. Placing an open space or a large bank of windows above the sink, for example, will also open up the space and sort of break up those big banks of cabinetry, allowing the room to breathe and keeping your kitchen from feeling overwhelmed with too much wood, especially if you choose wood all in the same color. Another quick tip for getting the most out of your cabinetry, for those that are not tall enough to reach into those higher cabinets that I just talked about a minute ago, you might want to think about reworking that underutilized space high up in the cabinets with, instead of horizontal shelves, maybe put vertical dividers. So you could store things up there like serving trays or oversized cutting boards that you don't use on a regular basis. Another idea is to set upper cabinetry directly on the countertop, which makes it easy for children to access. If nothing else, a roll top area like the one shown in this photo to house items like bread or snacks is a smart solution for things you want to keep close in hand, but you might not necessarily want out on the countertop for everyone to see. Some people also refer to these as appliance garages, and they do a great job of concealing items like things like coffee makers or kitchen mixers or toasters, things that you're probably going to need regularly, but you don't necessarily want out on the counter. One more thing before we move on, if you're building a log home specifically, I just want to say don't worry too much about how you're going to hang cabinets on round log walls. This is if you do in fact decide to have round logs in your interior spaces of your house. Typically, flat cabinets are mounted to a wood frame that's already been attached to those log walls, so it creates a flat space for your cabinet to hang off of. Of course, it's always smart to think of extra places to store kitchen items, such as within an island, or furniture items like hutches or buffets. If you take a look at this photo, for example, you can see that all of the wall space is used by incorporating cabinetry, and there's even this stacked bank of cabinets on the left. Not only does this clever idea offer an ample amount of out-of-sight storage, which we like, but it also serves as a sort of permanent structure that sections off the kitchen further from the rest of the open space, because you can see this is a big open space, and that tall structure, and then on the other side the fridge, sort of tell you this is the kitchen area. Another smart storage option, if you can swing it, is a walk-in pantry. Even a small walk-in pantry can make a kitchen much more efficient, and this is a place where you can concentrate much of the food and auxiliary kitchen items and needs into one easily accessible and relatively inexpensive space. So it frees up the kitchen for more space for people to gather. Even a 4x4 foot pantry with shallow shelves versus a 24-inch, say, reach-in cabinetry will decrease the amount of activity surrounding your kitchen, because if you need something out of your pantry, you can step inside instead of standing in the kitchen and opening that reach-in pantry and taking up space. So let's go over a few quick tips for pantry design. First, if you're going to do this, incorporate pullouts wherever possible. So whether you opt for a walk-in or a reach-in pantry, either way, you'll want to make your shelving work as best it can for you. So an easy solution is pull-out bins or baskets, which you can see in this photo below. Installing these types of containers at chest height or waist height or below will allow you to better see inside and take inventory of the items in your pantry. For smart storage, as you're putting things away, think about when you're going to need them next and how accessible you want them to be. If you only have room for a reach-in pantry as opposed to the walk-in one, your space is going to limit you probably purely to grocery items. So if you have bigger items, maybe you want to put those in a closet or a mudroom in another location in your house. Another quick thing that I want to mention, even if you're designing a modest kitchen to fit into a smaller cabin or cottage, this does not mean that you need to cut your storage short. So as you can see in this photo, these folks incorporated as much cabinetry as they could around the perimeter walls. And this type of design doesn't take up any precious square footage in a smaller home where you already have less square footage to spare, but they still have plenty of cabinetry in this kitchen. So now let's talk about eating areas. Another element that will affect the layout and space in your kitchen is whether or not you want to incorporate an eating area into the space. Because most people do wind up including this type of eat-in dining space in their kitchen, we'll talk about it for just a minute. Much like we discussed at the beginning of the webinar when we were talking about what you'll need for your kitchen, you want to think about the same things here. So you want to think about what you need now and in the future. Is an eat-in kitchen that can host as many diners as you need, or as much as a neighborhood bistro, useful for the way you really live? Or would you be happier with a space that's designed, say, just for intimate dinners for 2 people? Imagine the things your dream kitchen would make possible. Do you want to be able to accommodate holiday dinners, or are you more concerned about keeping an eye on the kids while you're cooking? It's also important to think about the future. Imagine how your needs might change in, say, 5 or 10 years. If your kids are a few years from college, say, it might be smart to make the space even smaller than you originally planned. On the flip side, if you find your circle is expanding with, say, grandkids or added family members, think about whether you might want to host large family get-togethers in your kitchen and you might want a bigger eat-in space. How big the eating space will be depends on both your budget and your lifestyle. But no matter what size you choose, we would recommend eliminating walls between the living area and the kitchen so that you can really boost that social environment. If you decide to do that, you could do something like place a long farmhouse table along one side of the cooking area between the kitchen and living area. In plans that do have a separate dining room, a round table tucked into a corner or an alcove might be a better fit for your kitchen. If your family usually eats breakfast in shifts, you could do something like shortening the counter, leaving room for only 2 bar stools. So that allows for a large dining table that works for both evening meals and when you host the family for a holiday, say. Another idea is that a lot of floor plans can easily be modified to accommodate a bump out or a bay window that could create one of those cozy table alcoves. If you can position your table and chairs to take advantage of a spectacular view rather than looking in on the kitchen and the cleanup area, that would be a great use for one of those bump out windows. When planning the dimensions for an eating nook, just think about allowing at least 18 inches and preferably 24 inches of elbow room for each diner. So don't make the space too tight. I just wanted to show one more image of a cozy eating area that Honest Abe provided before we move on. So this is one more cute little space. Okay, let's talk quickly about lighting. Lighting in a wood home can be challenging as log walls do tend to absorb light. And in the kitchen, lighting is obviously incredibly important, both for function and for creating ambiance. So while bright lights for cooking is a good idea in terms of function, a space that's lit up like a baseball field at the edge of your living area probably isn't exactly what you're going for. So we suggest installing low profile, bright fixtures, maybe they're fluorescent, above food prep areas and under your cabinet to provide ample lighting for meal prep and after dinner cleanup. For open countertops or an island, you can use recessed ceiling fixtures or track lighting like you can see in this photo, which spread light broadly over the whole area. You can place decorative pendant fixtures over the table or over the kitchen island to add visual appeal and functional lighting for your meals. And of course, it's always a good idea to add a dimmer switch so you can control all of these different lighting elements and set whatever mood you're trying to create. And of course, whenever you can incorporate natural light, like the windows in this image, it's always a good idea to do so. So the combination of lighting styles here paired with the windows is what makes this kitchen such a beautiful space. Whether you're planning a kitchen for someone with special needs or if you're just trying to create a space that will work both now and in the future, universal design is a really good place to start. If you're not familiar, the point of universal design is that your space should be welcoming and accessible to a wide variety of people regardless of their age or their size or their ability. So whether you decide to go the route of universal design or not, it's a smart thing to at least think about when you're planning your kitchen, and you can certainly include just a few of these design ideas here and there to make your kitchen function a little better. So really quickly, here are a few things that designers recommend to achieve a universally designed kitchen. For flooring, you might want to choose comfortable, slip-resistant flooring to make moving throughout the kitchen safe for everyone. A single lever faucet is easy for most people to use. You might even want to include one of those new cool touch-on or touchless faucets. Open shelving for storage makes it easy for anyone to be able to find items quickly. Same thing with glass front cabinets. They keep items contained, but people can see what's in them before they have to go reaching for them. They recommend outfitting your cabinets with pull-out shelves, much like we talked about in the pantry, to make it easier to grab items that are located near the back of the space. And keep bowls and plates, perhaps, in a lower cabinet as opposed to in the upper cabinetry to make it easier for people to put them away after cleaning. Kitchen islands are a great addition to any kitchen space, so make sure it has enough mobility around it for people of any age or ability to be able to get around. Varied countertop heights is another thing, maybe varying the height of the countertops throughout the kitchen so that everyone can have a place to work or eat comfortably. Hardware is a big one. Choosing large handles for the cabinets and drawers throughout your kitchen is a lot easier than those tiny circular knobs. So D-shaped pulls, like the ones you can see here, the bar pulls, are easy for people to grab and pull. Also think about space beneath the sink and stovetop. If you include a recessed sort of niche beneath the sink, like you can see in this photo, people who potentially might need to use a wheelchair would be able to still sit and use that area. And last, this idea of a pot filler is really smart. If you have a pot filler on your stove, you can fill a huge pot of water right there on the stove instead of doing it in the sink and then having to carry it over. So before we wrap things up, I just want to go back to the fun stuff for a minute and talk about some inspiration and trends. In the last few years, the popularity of what people are calling transitional kitchens has exceeded that of traditional kitchens even, so it's really become one of the favorites. The idea behind transitional kitchens is that they include elements of both traditional and contemporary designs. So they can mix natural and man-made materials as well as finishes and textures. So if you think about it, this means that the hottest trend in kitchens is actually a really perfect match for log and timber homes. And it's a clear indication that just because you're building a wood home, it does not mean that you necessarily need to create a rustic or really wood-heavy kitchen. For example, a mountain-style kitchen can be made transitional by mixing up the color palette, say a colored backsplash, or adding reclaimed materials in the form of cabinets or flooring, and then showcasing appliances rather than trying to, say, hide them or have them blend in with their surroundings. So if you take a look on the screen, in this kitchen, there's a lot of wood. There's wood walls. There's wood cabinetry and drawers. There's wood flooring. But it's paired with these really beautiful black finishes, and then this really sleek countertop and backsplash behind the stove, and then these really cool restaurant-grade appliances. So it's this cool mix. It still feels rustic, but it doesn't have to be all brown all the time. Before we move on to another point, I just wanted to show you that here's another kitchen that pairs that rustic, woodsy cabinet. You can see all the pretty knots in the wood, but then it's paired with this really sleek countertop, and then if you look in the back corner, it has these really cool high-end stainless steel appliances. And just because, again, because you like the look of wood doesn't mean you have to stick with that throughout your entire kitchen space. The kitchen's actually a really great place to showcase other materials. Among painted cabinetry, which is a really hot trend right now, white has stayed on top of the chart since the last few years. So given that it's become so popular and really stayed that way, it's showing that white kitchens aren't really a fad. It's probably something that you're going to see for years to come. So the use of light, medium, and natural finishes has remained more or less consistent over the last year. And while whites and off-whites remain the top color scheme, people are also doing things like beiges or bone colors and even grays or light browns for their kitchen countertops, which, as you can see here, creates a really beautiful contrast against wood walls and wood floors. As far as countertops are concerned, granite definitely still leads the pack. And if you think about it, it's a really great match for wood walls and finishes because of the different color choices you have and also the different pattern choices. Another popular countertop is quartz, which has become sort of the second most popular material, and it offers a lot of the same looks and feels that you'll get with granite, but these sleek, really cool countertops, as you can see, look great in a log or timber house. Just like the best homes have a spirit that's warm and inviting, a welcoming kitchen should also feature a personal element that will draw you in and make you feel like you're part of something special, part of something that you created, something with a little character. So finishing details like incorporating a brick or a stone wall, very much like the one that you can see here along the island and up along the side, they help to visually break up the open space, and they're also just a good idea for adding some extra style to the kitchen, something unexpected that people might not think they're going to see. Adhering to that same principle, I always like when people add a pop of color, either around the base of your kitchen island or maybe up along the top of your cabinets, or here you can see they've even incorporated some kind of wallpaper treatment. And it's a good way to add visual interest and really give a certain style to your kitchen in a space, especially if the space is otherwise pretty neutral. Also, quirky furnishings, like if you look on the left, they have these barrel-style stools that pair with the barrels that are under the kitchen island. It's just a unique way to bring some fun or some whimsy into your space. So that is the end of the presentation. And just to wrap up, I encourage all of you to check out our magazines, check out our websites, including Honest Abe's Log Homes website, where they have tons of photography if you're looking for more detailed information on kitchens or just floor plans or photo inspiration. So that is it. Amanda is now going to direct our question and answer portion. But again, if you'd like to send any questions directly to us, you can send them to me or Claudia@honestabe.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for a great presentation. And we do have a ton of questions rolling in. So we're going to take some time to answer what we can right now. To assist our speaker, Sarah, with questions, we also have Honest Abe Log Home designer, Melissa Copas, with us, and Honest Abe Log Home president, Josh Beasley, on the line. So I'm going to get started here. Melissa, we're going to start with you. I have a couple questions about kitchen islands. What should you consider when deciding whether to put the stovetop or sink on the island?
That's a good question. Mostly it's preference for your customer, but you need to think about ventilation for a stovetop if you're going to put that in your island, and when if you're wanting to communicate with your family from this island, where you're going to, if you're going to be at your stovetop more than your sink, then that's one thing to think about.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, Josh, were you going to step in there?
Melissa and I are in the same room here, and we've already had a fight over this question. So we were talking about it during part of the presentation, and I think in her home,
yes, I have my
stovetop. Yeah, your stovetop, right? And I told her I greatly prefer the cleanup area, the sink, to be in the island, and want to feel, don't want to feel disconnected from everybody while we're cleaning up. And I just want to echo what she said. I think it really does come down a lot to personal preference.
Okay, wonderful. So the other question we have around an island is, are there pros and cons to a 2-level island versus a 1-level island?
The 2-level island, I would think that part of that, one level would be more for a bar area, and then the lower level for a workspace. So when you split those up, I guess you're losing more of your work area if you're turning that into a bar.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Melissa. Another one I'm going to throw your way, Melissa. We've got a question about who designed the kitchens in the photos that Sarah used in her presentation.
Well, there's been several different designers that have worked on all of the plans. So pinpointing which one has done it is kind of hard. I know that one of the plans that they showed, one of the pictures, when they were talking about the prep zone areas, that was a home that is built pretty close to here. It's just down the road a little bit. It's a Daniel's home.
Okay, and so all the kitchens that we showcased today are Honest Abe Log Home kitchens, correct?
Yes, I think so. All the pictures.
Yeah, they are.
They all are.
Melissa's being humble. She's been doing this for about 17 years, so she's done a lot of those.
Great. So, Josh, I've got a question for you now. At what point in the process does the general contractor and cabinet maker need to be brought in together?
Oh yeah, that's a good question, and we have I think when people bring their ideas to our designers, to somebody like Melissa, they're excited and they're getting started in the process, and they want to communicate all these different ideas to us, and I love what Sarah shared earlier about bringing in pictures and clippings of things that they've seen that they like. One thing we would recommend is try to drill those down as much as possible, just to kind of limit what you're throwing at your designer. But at the same time, at some point through this process, that has to get communicated down to the various trades. So, and I can just speak kind of from our experience, and this may change a little bit with the different companies, different people that you work with, but for us, we're doing a lot. Melissa's doing a lot of the functional layout.
The basic layout of your
Yeah.
kitchen.
Identifying, where you want the sink and the stove and the dishwasher, and trying to help people with the experience that she's had in coming up with that working triangle, and coming up with a layout that suits their lifestyle. Beyond that, you really have to start communicating a lot of the things that also Sarah talked about as far as what they visualize when they walk into that kitchen. From our position, we're not necessarily going to be involved in the color of cabinets, or maybe various colors, various countertops, all those types of things. So really, those specific details have to get communicated on down through the trades. So you really need to make sure you're communicating all of that to your general contractor, and possibly if you're having custom cabinets made, whoever's involved, you just need to make sure that we're not the only ones that you're telling, obviously.
Wonderful. So on a somewhat related note, can you discuss a little bit, are people able to use a standard or model floor plan but then customize the kitchen?
Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's, we have standard plans on our website and so forth, and really that is just to get people some ideas.
It's
They're really just starting points.
Yeah.
And very, very seldom do we ever build a home directly off of a plan like that. They're pretty much always customized.
Yeah, almost always.
And they should be. People have waited a long time to do this, and they need to get it the way they really want it.
Wonderful. All right, back to some of the very basic of kitchen things, the floors. We've got someone saying, I've been seeing a lot of wood floors in the photos. What is more durable for a busy kitchen? Melissa, I'll throw that your way first.
And who is that directed at?
Oh, Melissa, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You do see wood floors more often, and a hardwood floor is going to stand up, but a tile floor would probably work out better. If you're using, you're going to be using a lot of water in your kitchen, so a tile floor would probably last a lot longer.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. And then we also have a question about quality of granite. Melissa, is this something you can talk to a little bit? The difference in quality in a slab or of a single piece of granite. I'm not sure if I'm wording that quite correctly, but
I'd say that granite would be a more lasting countertop for sure.
Can I just say something about that real quick, Amanda?
Sure.
The only thing I would say about granite, I agree with Melissa, it's a really strong, durable product, and the good thing about it is because they tend to be very patterned, they do mask, if there's anything on your countertops, you're probably not going to see all of it because of all the patterns. And the only thing you'll want to keep in mind is if you have a big oversized kitchen island, say, without a sink in the middle or a range or a stovetop, just a big section of granite, you probably, or you might want to talk to someone about getting one big slab instead of piecing two pieces together, because they might not line up exactly right, and on a big interrupted island, it would probably look a little nicer to have one big piece that fits together, if that makes sense.
It does. And on that note, Sarah, on countertops, you had mentioned granite and quartz. How about wood or soapstone?
Both really popular options, especially I'm seeing a lot of people doing granite or quartz or something more standard around the perimeters, and then people might put something like wood or soapstone on their kitchen islands. From what I know, soapstone's very popular. I think it's a little softer than the other products, so that's something you might want to consider if you're going to be doing a lot of hard work on something like soapstone. And wood is nice. You just want to make sure that it's properly sealed because obviously wood could have some sort of damage to it. So both very popular options that I'm seeing a lot recently. I just think it's something you probably want to ask about, and maybe not something you'd want for your entire kitchen.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm also going to give you a chance to answer this one too, but you might let Josh and Melissa. Is there a general ratio of the square footage of the kitchen to the whole home?
Wow, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. All I know is that from where I stand, I see a lot of big kitchens that tend to open into the main living and possibly dining room, so it feels like this big open space. So you can't even really tell where the kitchen starts and begins, but I don't know a specific ratio. Melissa, I'm not sure if you know anything about that.
Well, I think mostly what I see is probably around like a 14 by 12 area for your kitchen. That seems to be the standard. But the bigger the house, the bigger your kitchen can be in it. And if you're going to be using it for a lot of baking, a lot of canning, then you would need more countertop space for sure.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
to me, I think.
Oh, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I just think it kind of gets down to lifestyle. It seems like a lot of our customers aren't necessarily as interested in designing things to maintain resale value and things like that. So they're more interested in just maintaining the lifestyle that they want. So for me personally, I enjoy cooking. I really enjoy eating, and so I think I would tend to, I'd probably have a larger kitchen than what the average ratio would be. But if you're a couple that really don't, your lifestyle doesn't revolve around that much, it's not a center point in your home now, then it's probably not going to be a center point in your home going further. So you might not have to put so much emphasis on it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Josh. I think we're going to wrap up here with one last question. If you do have other questions, please note that there is a good chance we'll be following up with you after the webinar. So final question, Melissa, this is for you. Is it possible to have a farm sink in the island?
In the island? I guess that would be possible. I don't know that I've seen that. I've always seen them in like countertops around the walls, the exterior walls. But I'm sure that would be possible.
All right, thank you. So that is all the time we have for questions this evening. We hope you enjoyed the presentation. We will be sending an email with the link to the recording of this event, and it should be coming out in the next 24 hours. On behalf of our sponsor, Honest Abe Log Homes and MyWoodHome.com and Timber Home Living, we would like to thank you for joining us. Have a good night, everyone.